Howdy. So it's time to get a little practice and test out this streaming stuff. So we're going to do a little naming practice. I've got a couple of them here that I want to practice naming and just review a little bit. So I've got the naming overview PowerPoint, and I just want to kind of just get started from there. So we're going to name, first on our list is calcium bromide. Notice I just rattled that off. CaBr2. But we want to go through our checklist. And so our checklist is figure out, is it ionic? Is it covalent? Does it have any polyatomic ions? Does it have a common name? The positive ion, does it have multiple different charges? So we want to tell most of that by looking at our periodic table. So let's slap down the periodic table we've been using on our test. So Ca is over here in the alkaline earth metals. Bromine is in the halogens. We can see we cross the staircase. Clearly it's going to be ionic. Br is close to the fluorine, so that's a more electronegative. It'll be our negative ion. So CrBr2, CaBr2, this is going to then be my positive. This will be my negative. There's no polyatomic ions. So calcium comes first. Bromine becomes bromide. And that's straightforward. We don't have to worry about calcium having any other charges than a +2 because it's in group 2. Group 2 is always +2 if it's with something. Group 1, except hydrogen, is always a +1. And aluminum is always a +3 if it's with something. Alright, so the next one on my list was CuNO3 2. And so this one, we've got a little bit more going on. Let's start off by the parentheses. Parentheses tell me I've got a polyatomic ion. So we need to know the name of this polyatomic ion. That one happens to be on our list to memorize, and that's nitrate. So nitrate is my negative. It's got a -1 charge. Copper, when I find it, it has a positive charge in this case, and it is in the D block. So remember the D block, the F block, and under the staircase except aluminum, then we have to use the IC and the US system or the stock system. So this one we don't have enough info for the IC and the US, so we're going to be using the stock system. And that's the one that you have parentheses. So we'll have copper, something in parentheses, and then nitrate. Reminder that on the polyatomic ions, you do not change the endings. So I've got to figure out the charge on this copper. So I'm going to do subscript times charge plus subscript times charge equals the total charge. Alright, the subscript on the copper is a 1. I do not know its charge, that's what we're trying to find. Subscript for the NO3 is this 2. We have 2 nitrates. Each one has a -1 charge. And the total charge here is 0 because there's nothing up here. Alright, so doing my math, skipping a few steps, we get a +2 charge. That's the charge that goes here. Okay, so this is copper 2 nitrate. Now if they had told me that it could be copper could be +1 or +2, then this is also then cupric nitrate. Keep in mind on the test I'll always tell you the options if I want you to have multiple ones. Now, let's rattle some stuff around here. Next on my list then, SMG. So SMG has, let's find it on our periodic table, magnesium's in group 2. S is over here in the oxygen family. The S will be my negative. Magnesium will always be a +2. So that means when I go to name this SMG, then magnesium is a plus, sulfur is a negative, so this will be magnesium sulfide, And that's it. We don't need any parentheses or anything because magnesium is always a +2. Next on my list is H2O2. So when I find hydrogen, don't forget hydrogen has to move. It'll be above the B and the C. So hydrogen and oxygen, we do not cross the staircase, so it's going to be a covalent bond. It's a polar covalent bond because they're not touching. And so we could call this dihydrogen dioxide. And that would be acceptable, but it won't be the answer. That's not the answer that we're going to find. This actually has a common name that we are supposed to memorize. So this is actually hydrogen peroxide. And so just a reminder, we've got 5 that we're expected to know: salt, water, ammonia, and ammonium is on that list as well. So these 5 you need to know, need to memorize. We also want to be careful about our diatomic elements. There's 7 of them. So hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and then fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and iodine. So all of those will be something gas, and that's how we'll refer to those. And so nice way to keep up with it. Pick up hydrogen, come over here to nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, makes a 7 in the corner. All right. So next on my list was C6H10. C6H10. Just looking over at my periodic table, I've got carbon and hydrogen. Don't forget it'll be moved, and so this is actually a nonpolar covalent bond. So I'm going to use my prefixes. So 6 happens to be hexa, so I'll have hexacarbon because it comes first. 10 is deca, and hydrogen becomes hydride. That simple. Alright, next up on our list is going to be FeSO4, and it's got a note here. Fe can be +2 or +3. So if we see this kind of stuff, it's a pretty good giveaway that we're going to be doing the ik and the us. We could be potentially using the stock system. They're done very similar. So let's start by the fact that when I find Fe, it runs back in here in the D block. So but it already tells us there. We also have SO4. We need a name of that. That happens to be sulfate. And so you have to memorize that in our list of polyatomic ions. Now to tell if this is Fe that's a +2 or a +3, again we're going to do our math. So I've got 1 iron. I don't know its charge. I've got 1 sulfate. So let's go ahead and add parentheses back around that. And so even though that 4 is there, it's part of the piece. And it has a -2 charge. That's part of our things to memorize. And the total charge is 0 because there's nothing there. X comes out to be 2 in this case again. So this will be iron 2 sulfate. But that's probably not on there. So we need to worry about this ik and the us. So our options here then will be ferric sulfate and ferrous sulfate. Remember, I'm not going to test you on the Latin, but the I for higher, O for lower, and so ours is a +2. That's the lower, and so we know it's ferrous sulfate. Okay, so that one's not too bad, but it is commonly missed. Next on my list, I've got some names, and I want to figure out the formulas. So the first one up, trinitrogen heptabromide. Trinitrogen heptabromide. All right. Well, when we see these prefixes, they're telling me it's covalent bonds. Nitrogen, I have 3 of them. Br for bromine, don't forget IDE just changed. You're going to have to look up bromine, and I've got 7 of those. So not too bad. Those are nice and easy. I like the covalent system. Next up is sodium sulfate. Very common compound, so go find. I tell you, hey, go grab me a bottle of this. So we find this symbol here, sodium. Notice the lack of prefixes. Pretty good indicator. It's an ionic bond. So sulfate, you have to remember sulfate is SO4. This ATE, it's a nice giveaway that it's a polyatomic ion. So I'm going to find sodium. It's in group 1, so it's a +1. Sulfate, we had to memorize, it's a -2. So don't forget, you'll need the name, the formula, and the charge all memorized for table 3.3, the ones in red. Okay, so I'm ready to do my crisscross. I want you to remember polyatomic ions get parentheses. And so a 1 comes here, and the 2 comes down there. So I'm bringing this 2 across. Don't bring the negative. So Na2SO4. Now usually we leave off these parentheses 1, but I want to keep it for right now just so I can see. I don't want to reduce the ratio. The ratio is 2 to 1, not 2 to 4. That 4 is part of the piece. Alright, so what I'm saying is I have 2 sodiums and 1 SO4, one piece that has 4 oxygens. Running out of space on that one. Alright, potassium hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide. Potassium's K. Again, we got an ionic bond. Hydroxide, OH. Potassium's in group 1. It's got a +1. Hydroxide's got a -1. I crisscross, it's 1 to 1. So it'll just be KOH. Last one on my list for practicing is iron 2 nitride. Oh, I see people miss this all the time. This nitride, they start to think of nitrate because of all the memorization we did on nitrate, NO3. There's a nitrite. There's nitride, though, is just N that has a negative charge. I've got an iron, and the charge on iron is a +2, and I know that because of these Roman numerals. I need to find the charge on the nitrogen. So I'm going to pull out my periodic table. And nitrogen is in group 15. It's going to gain 3 electrons. That'll give you the -3 charge. So -3 charge there. When I do my crisscross, Fe3 N2. And so a nice way of thinking about this is I've got 3 of these plus 2 irons. And almost out of room here. And 2 N-3s. And so a +6 and a -6, that cancels out. So Fe3N2. And so that's good practice for our naming. What we've got next is chapter 4. Hopefully this video works and this system works okay for you. But I wanted you to get a little practice on naming before we get ready to take our exam on that and start doing all the homework. I'll see you soon.